Hi everyone. New year thingy, new shelf Tano. New shelf? Not here. Over there. Right there. New shelf. The internet's busiest music nerd here, and it's time for a review of the new Huncho Jack album, Huncho Jack, Jack Huncho. Is it usually this bright in here? I feel a little out of sorts. It's been a week. I'm not used to the lights again. I'm not used to the lights. This is a new collaborative record from two rappers based in the Atlanta area, Travis Scott and the Migos' own Quavo. It would seem suddenly released projects from trendy rappers is kind of all the rage right now, with recent releases from Offset, 21 Savage, and Metro Boomin, as well as Future and Young Thug, being some of the most talked about records of 2017. And this will most likely be a larger and larger trend moving forward in 2018 because it's a lot easier to sort of build a record off of the hype of two brands colliding rather than working for years and years and years on a single project, trying to fashion an entirely new sound or bring the trendy sounds you rode in on up to a higher level, which in my opinion is what Travis Scott did on his Rodeo record. However, since then he doesn't seem quite as interested in taking risks and redefining standards as much as he is just kind of playing it safe and playing to expectations. Still though, I did go into this thing expecting greatness, especially considering how much I enjoyed Without Warning. If that thing could just pull up out of nowhere and be pretty good, then this, for sure, it's possible. Also, one of my favorite artists of all time, Ralph Steadman, did the cover art for this thing. I am a huge Hunter S. Thompson and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas fan. And the whole Huncho Jack, Jack Huncho lore behind this thing is pretty intriguing too. Unfortunately, this record is not quite as epic or as ambitious as I had hoped. And while it is listenable, its cardinal sin is actually that it's way too predictable and run-of-the-mill and bland. It feels kind of like I'm listening to a handful of cool ideas that have somehow been stretched out past the 40-minute mark. I mean, despite the pretty dense list of producers on this thing, the instrumental palette of this record ends up pretty uniform. It's pretty much just one moody, spacey trap beat laced with sad, hypnotic melodies after another, mostly made for just vibing out. There are some interesting sample choices throughout the project here and there. The ones that stood out to me, or at least the ones that I recognized right away, was you had a Mac DeMarco sample on the song How You Feel. That was a pretty nice Otis Redding intro on the first track to this thing. And another thing about this project that pops is occasionally some of Travis Scott's and Quavo's layered auto-tune vocal harmonies come off pretty heavenly, prime example being the song Go. However, not so much on the song Best Man, which seems way too weakly improvised and off the cuff to actually sound like a legitimately written and conceived track, and shows in a way just how little effort went into this thing overall. But again, back to the uniformity of this album, it's really too uniform at points to really truly pick out any highlights from it, because while there are some tracks on here I do enjoy more than others, they're not really that much better in comparison. There are a handful of tracks on this thing that barely pass the 2-minute mark, don't really leave that strong of an impression. Travis Scott's and Quavo's warbling auto-tune rap flows kind of bleed into one another and become more and more redundant as the project draws on. The Offset and Takeoff features on this thing are actually like serious highlights here because they break up the monotony of this thing a bit. And I get that there's not going to be a whole lot of lyrical substance to a project like this, but still, even some of the hooks, which you really want the hooks on this thing to pop, seem pretty phoned in. From the yeah, yeah, yeahs on Saint Laurent Mask to rapping about looking at other people in the eyes and touching the sky on Eye to Eye, Please. Miss me with that. I get that this album mostly comes down to aesthetic, but the aesthetic is only so interesting because there's only so much aesthetic here. It doesn't change up that much. I mean, unless a certain instrumental bit or a hook on this thing blows up, there's not really much to talk about here. I love the hook on Saint. You could see the road I blank. Dubai shit. Dubai whips, too much of alcohol, we need more options. But still, at the end of the day, all I can really say about this thing is that it's just listenable. It's merely listenable. It's pleasant, It's woozy. It's not nearly as unique or as memorable or as finely written as some of Migos and Travis Scott's more recent work, especially when comparing this to Culture, especially when comparing this to Rodeo or some of the best tracks on Birds Singin' the Trap. For the most part, Huncho Jack seems very wash, rinse, and repeat. To the point where if you're not paying close attention to track after track after track of this thing, you're going to get deja vu. It's almost kind of like getting lost in the forest on this thing. Not to mention that this collaboration seems more like just a mere series of tracks that Travis Scott has masterminded and Quavo has merely featured on. I mean, you could plug a number of different trendy auto-crooning rappers onto some of these tracks and you would get roughly the same results. I think the art, the marketing, the branding, these two artists coming together was certainly smart and certainly has created a lot of buzz, a lot of interest, a lot of listens. But this project is just very low on ideas, it's very bubblegum, it's very shallow, and in my opinion exemplifies just how uninteresting some of these sudden collaborative records can be. When you have a listening audience more interested in the names attached to the project than the substance of what's actually being recorded. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Just leave an angry comment in the comments if you're angry, or a thoughtful comment if you're feeling thoughtful. Over here next to my head is my Rodeo review. You can click on that, or you can click on the link to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one forever.